Smile. Horror story. Ashi had just come to Delhi to live in a new flat, leaving Uttarakhand for college. She found a flat about half an hour away from her college. For the next 2 days, Ashi and her parents, who had come to drop her off, started setting up her home. While setting up the house, they found a cardboard box from the previous owners, but they just set it aside. 3 days later, after saying goodbye to Ashi, her parents left for their home in Uttarakhand. As they were leaving, Ashi's mother turned back and gave her a tight hug. Once more, they said they were feeling a strange unease. It would have been better if Ashi had taken this unease a bit more seriously, because what was about to happen to her in the coming days was something no one had imagined. Ashi had a great passion for photography and editing, and she wanted to pursue something further in this field. But due to a bit of a financial shortage at home, she was never able to buy a professional camera for herself. However, she was happy after coming to Delhi. She had made many friends in college. She had even planned a small party for her friends on the upcoming Saturday. Before she knew it, Friday had arrived. As soon as she returned from college, she started cleaning the house for the party. While cleaning the balcony, her eyes fell on the cardboard box lying in the corner, which had completely rotted from being outside for so long. The smell of rotting cardboard was coming from that box. But for some reason, it was attracting Ashi towards it. When Ashi opened the box, she found an old vintage camera and a reel, along with some old memorabilia. Seeing this, Ashi was very happy and quickly opened the camera, removed the old reel, and started taking photos with a new reel. She was somewhat surprised that in such an old box, while everything else was ruined, how this camera was still working. But she set aside all these thoughts and quickly went outside to take photos of the flowers, pots, and plants. Right in front of Ashi's flat lived an elderly aunt, Mrs. Kaushik, who used to say good morning to her every day as she went to college. Seeing the aunt and her cat on the balcony, Ashi took some photos of them too and thought she would get those pictures developed and gift them to the aunt. The next morning, Ashi got all the pictures developed at a nearby photo studio and put them in an envelope. Then went straight to Mrs. Kaushik, who liked the photos very much. When Ashi returned home, she started looking at the rest of the pictures and noticed something very strange in each one. In the background of every picture taken with that camera, somewhere or the other, there was a very blurry shadow with a smile on its face. As Ashi kept looking at those photos, she got lost in them. It seemed to her as if the shadow's smile was gradually increasing in every picture, and in every other picture, it was coming closer to the camera. Suddenly, the doorbell of Ashi's house rang. When Ashi opened the door, her friends were standing there. Saturday had arrived, and her friends had come for the house party, but Ashi was feeling a bit unwell. So she cancelled the party, and sent her friends back. When she returned to her room, her attention went back to the camera. This time, Ashi took some pictures of herself in the mirror with that camera. Suddenly, a crack started forming on the mirror. Seeing this, the camera slipped from Ashi's hand. As soon as Ashi turned around, she saw her own reflection in the mirror. But in that reflection, she still had the camera in her hand and a terrifying smile on her face. Seeing this, she screamed loudly and stumbled over a chair, falling to the ground. When she got up, the mirror was completely normal, except for a crack on it. She thought it was all her imagination, so she quietly went to sleep. 2 days later, while studying in her living room, Ashi dozed off in the afternoon and woke up at 3 a.m. She gathered her books and started heading to her room. But what she saw from the drawing room window left her in shock. Mrs. Kaushik was standing on her balcony, but there was a huge smile on her face, just like in the other pictures. Ashi froze as if she was trying her hardest, but she couldn't move from there. Suddenly, a hand appeared from behind Mrs. Kaushik, holding a piece of glass, and attacked her throat lethally. Ashi wanted to scream, but no sound came out of her mouth. Terrified, she closed her eyes tightly. And when she opened them, she was lying on her bed, with Mrs. Kaushik's cat roaming around. Thinking it was a dream, Ashi went back to sleep. Ashi woke up directly at 9 p.m. the next night from a call from her friend and saw the cat sitting in the corner of the room. The cat was intently staring at the camera, but Ashi's eyes widened when she saw bloodstains all over her bed from the cat's paws. Ashi ran back to her window, but when he went and saw Mrs. Kaushik was at the same place where he had seen her, standing last night, and she had that piece of glass in her hand. Next to her, her cat was sitting in a pool of blood, licking its feet. The flowers around had wilted, and all the plants in the pots had died as well. Ashi ran to her room. The cat had disappeared from there, but the bloodstains were still spread all around the room. Ashi was not able to understand anything. She quickly went and threw that camera in her drawer. Then her eyes fell on the old reel lying in the box. When she looked closely at it, she realized that the old reel was of Mrs. Kaushik. The same plants and flowers that had been taken just 3 days ago. But this time the shadow was clearly visible. In every picture, Ashi herself was standing behind, with that same terrifying smile on her face. Ashi felt like she was going crazy, and as she looked at the next pictures, her whole body went numb. The next pictures were from her childhood, from her school, and in every picture, that shadow was standing right behind Ashi, looking at her with its scary smile. Suddenly, there was a click from the camera that had been thrown into the dustbin, but there was nothing behind her. Then Ashi saw the last picture of the reel, and it was also of Ashi, taken in the drawing room, holding the reel, pulled from the dustbin. But the scariest thing about that photo was that right in front of Ashi stood Mrs. Kaushik, and many others, all with long, terrifying smiles, trembling. Ashi looked up, and that shadow came right in front of her and screamed loudly. After that night, Ashi didn't come to college, nor did she answer anyone's calls. The next day, her friends went inside with the flat agent, but there was no one there. Just a lot of belongings, and right in the middle of the stuff was a vintage camera and a reel that Ashi's parents had taken with her things. For many months, there was no trace of Ashi, but one day, Ashi's little brother picked up that camera and took a photo of a tree outside their house, which completely rotted 3 days later. When his little brother developed that photo, he saw Ashi standing behind that tree